Hello and welcome to this chapter, and here we'll see the famous and infamous Jobava attack. Here with knight c3. The idea is that white wants to expand in the center with e4, and usually white is already expecting our answer, which is d5. Here there are a couple possibilities. At first I was really much convinced to give just only d5, but actually c5 is actually an also possibility. I mean, it's not... it's a bit more risky here, I would say, but here it transposes basically to the delayed Benoni, like well, not even delayed, but it's d4 c5 Benoni. So yeah, it could be played. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not optimal neither, because we in that case with c5 and move 1, we want to play g6 bishop g7 with d6 without the knight on f6. So again, here you're on your own. This is not a transposition. And also I feel d5 is too good. I mean, I don't really like to change the shape of the structure, but the shape of the dynamics or how you should play the Benoni. That's why I stick to 2c5 for most of the files. But here d5, I feel it's so easy. And so basically the general rule is you want to play g6, bishop g7 castle, and then c5. And the knight on c3 doesn't help white at all. White cannot pressure the center, white cannot defend the center, and the knight here doesn't have any jumps. It's kind of awkward. White cannot push e4. So again, the key is this knight. That's why we play d5. Here, white has a couple ideas. Usually bishop f4 is the Jobava attack, and bishop g5 is just bad, yeah? Like, the Trompowsky is a good defense, is interesting, opening, sorry. But with the knight on c3, again, most of the ideas of the Trompowsky don't work anymore. Yeah, like white wants to get some, exchange the bishop, get some presence on the center, and then get some kind of pawn chain in dark squares. And again, this knight doesn't belong here because white doesn't want to play e4 at some point. And here I have a very funny idea, which is h6, that I found on the board. I thought, okay, but why do I really care if white takes on f6? Like, if our opponent takes on f6, I mean, white doesn't have c4. And also, by comparison, I play this position in the Dutch. Yeah, it's very... In the Dutch, this is kind of theoretical, because black has this pawn on f5. So basically, it restricts everything. We can never get the f6 square for a piece, because we cannot push this pawn to get something here. This bishop is permanently closed, and this is as well. So it's a completely different story, yeah? So here, that's why I played h6, because I already played the Dutch. So here after e3, c6, f5, basically we want to control the light squares, and our pieces would control the dark squares, yeah, the minor pieces. So g6, h5, you see how basically I move one piece and 7 moves with the pawns, and now we just put the knight on f6, and the position was already amazing, yeah. And bishop g7 and castle, and later on knight e4 and c5 in a good timing would be good. I mean, in general, we don't want to play c5, as this pawn might get isolated, but later on I feel it might be powerful. And white this just has a very unpractical position. g4 is never a possibility, and we have all the control of the position, I guess. And white at some point will try to play c4, but we can also go for b5 if we need to. But in general, it's just terrible, yeah? So after briefly checking this, bishop f4 is the main concern. But here again, I actually played this with white, since I was playing d4 and bishop f4. But if white played d4, so d4, knight f6, bishop f4, g6, here I would play knight c3. So basically d5 was what people used to play. So basically we got the transposition after g6. And I played this with white, and I played a game. I especially remember a game against a young Serbian guy, that Idic, and I got completely demolished by a very simple plan. I feel like, and actually I became a fan of the plan, and actually I started playing this with black. And I got really good results and really good games and very easy. So the general rule is, main idea for white is to play e3, bishop g7, and play h4. The concept of h4 is that after castle here, we could give up the change with white, because black still has so many pieces away, and white is actually threatening our king very fast, yeah? And yeah, we get into trouble very quickly. Actually, white is much better, I feel. Even if we get to play knight d7, knight f6, the attack is very comfortable and very easy for white. So that's why we usually play h5 to prevent everything. And here the plan is very simple. You want a castle, c5, knight c6, bishop f5. That's it. And develop all the pieces. You don't care if white takes on c5. So here, knight e5 is the most convenient idea for white. White gets some space, wants to play f3, wants to play queen d2 to get some control of the e4 square, to negate our knight, to jump here, because at some point this plan is possible as well, so that's why white gets ahead of it. But here's e5, queen d2, knight c6, e-beach, yeah, sorry, e-beach, I don't know, the name wasn't coming. And after knight c6, again, we will see the model game, and you'll see how I felt powerless, like very easy. And all the pieces are just developing, and okay, we have an opposite castle, but our king side is so strong, like f3, g4 is not easy to make, and we have a lot of presence on the center, so white cannot just go all in on the attack. Yeah? So, yeah, this is the main line, and basically it's pretty simple. And this is what I usually teach my students. I don't teach them more. Like, it's very simple, you don't need to know more, it's very practical, you just need to play it. And here white has different tries. For instance, knight b5. It's a bit of a more strategic try. Obviously, knight c7 is a threat, but knight a6, the main idea is that if you are to play c5 later on, white would be left with a very uncomfortable situation as black, sorry, because our knight would be kind of stuck here. Let's say knight f3, let's say we play c5. White just plays c3, for instance. How am I supposed to move this knight? And if bishop d7, a4 might be strong, and we just keep, we just have a very normal London actually for white, and very strong bishop, and the knight on a6 doesn't belong there. So castle is better, and here we have a rule of thumb that is easy to follow, I feel. Here we want to create counterplay immediately, fast. So it's not a position that we want to just chill because white wants to play h3, knight h5. Here there are many plans that are interesting. Let's say whenever h3, there is this creative plan that I really like, which is knight c7, knight d8, knight d6, and then b6, bishop b7, queen c8, bishop a6. Basically, we get control of all the light squares while white cannot do much. But this is a bit strategical. But here I found knight e4, which is much fun. So here we want to play f6 and e5 very quickly. So if, and also we threaten c6 and queen a5 check, because the knight is a bit weird. Let's say white just tries to castle, we play c6, now queen b6, and we threaten the pawn. And if queen c1, we just develop, and we just put the rooks, we play c5, and then we'll play knight b8, knight c6, yeah? And everything kind of makes sense in our position, yeah? And the knight on a3 is kind of isolated. So the idea is that white doesn't have this annoying knight b5 idea, and we can play c5 comfortably. And after rook b1, we have this funny trick, which is queen b4 check. And after if c3, we can just take the pawn, yeah, because this knight is loose. And after knight d2, we just play b5. And that threat was like, okay, what? When I saw it, I was like, what's going on? And it's very unusual and very creative, and I wanted to put it here. The idea is that knight on a3 doesn't have any square. So we are basically threatening taking on d2 and playing b4 and just trapping the knight. And white was kind of forced to play c3 now, and then this position is terrible because the b5 is actually useful. It prevents c4, and white to get some space. Yeah? And basically white already has another weakness here. So it was a very fun idea, like b5, to make use of this. So basically what I like about this is that against the more practical idea, or the more practical setup, we have a very punishing idea with knight e4. And against the more, let's say, aggressive idea with h4, we have a very easy plan, and white doesn't have any kind of attack. So I really like the approach, because usually here white wants to play a safe game, and on the other one white wants to risk it, but we have an easier game plan. Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of a mix of both. White has many moves here, knight d2 to exchange the knights, and here we exchange the knights, and now we play c6, and basically we want to play knight c7. And here there is a cool plan that it's kind of similar to what we did before. what we said before with knight e8. We want to play b6, bishop b7, queen c8, then move the knight away to threaten the bishop, and then just play bishop a6. And after we exchange those bishops, we will have enough presence in the center. We will play rook d8 and rook c8. And thanks to knight e6, it's very difficult for white to play e4, yeah, because we are threatening d4. And basically exchanging those bishops will allow us more space for our rooks, and eventually we will be able to play c5 and just get more space in the center. And white, again, the problem with this kind of Jobava London, or this kind of London, white doesn't want to exchange pieces because white has a structure that doesn't have mobility. White has a structure that just wants to have pieces moving around and to make use of the strong points, like this bishop or something else. But basically, if white only has this bishop, doesn't have any presence on the center, and white is controlling air, as we would say, like it's doing nothing specific. Yeah? And in case of knight a3, we could go for knight c7, and here shift the plan and rook e8, e5, because usually white has more control of e5, but here we could shift it and just get the space in the center, and again, we should be more than fine. And here white also can play c3, that looks reasonable, and to prevent c6, and basically, white kind of fixed this knight, yeah, if you think about it. Like, the problem with knight c3 is that this knight, again, doesn't allow the pawn chain, doesn't allow c4. But after knight b5, the idea is that white wants to shift to a London where black was forced to play d5, yeah? And this bishop is strong. This bishop is actually not hidden behind the pawn after d6. But here, we play dynamic. So here, we play f6, and we want to play e5, which is very strong. And the key idea is that, not king e2, not bunga cloud. And after e5, the idea is that white cannot take here because we take on f2 later on. So again, it's very dynamic. I really like it. Against every idea from white, we have surprises. After bishop to e5, bishop h2, c6, knight a3. Here, I really like taking here because we want to concrete stuff and very practical idea. In case of cd4, we can just do a check. And white is paying the price of having the bishop outside of the queen side. And now after knight d2, just c5 and f5. And again, white has all the pieces all over the place. And we are just going for the b2. And after f5, and white has trouble castling because of the pin. And again, this position is just a nightmare, I would say. It's very easy for us to play, to just push. And white has no clue what to do. Yeah? And after e4, we have some kind of a symmetrical position. Here we just need to know where to put our pieces. What's the worst piece we have? The knight on a6. So basically we just reroute the knight. And bishop h6, knight f4, I feel is the best plan. I mean, with the f6 pawn, we basically negate this knight any movement. And after bishop h6, knight f4, we exchange the best piece for white, which is this bishop usually. So then it's much easier to just play. Like, for instance, if queen c1, what white wants to prevent, we could even tease with h5, king h7, bishop h6. That would be a very creative way to solve the problem. Yeah? So black is more than fine here. This e4 is not that common, but again, it's very dynamic, very straightforward. We don't allow white to just chill there. Yeah? So here white has the other option to play knight f3. And it's kind of tricky, it's not the same, but more or less we have the same dynamic ideas. So after castle, bishop e2. But here knight h5 could be possible, but this is a bit different. Like, we allow bishop e5, and I mean, it should be fine for black, but I want to stick with a very concrete and dynamic idea here, which is c5. And this is insanely tricky for white. Like, if we were allowed to play knight c6, we are very happy. Again, bishop f5, rook c8, and the knight on c3 doesn't make any sense. So knight b5 is kind of a must. And here cd4 is an insane move that I'm pretty sure your opponent will be like, what? Why is he allowing me or she allowing me knight c7? So here, the idea is that after ed4, we can just play knight c6. And we can just go for knight h5 in case of, I mean, if white tries to make a draw, we can also play this intermediate move. And now it's very important that after we exchange on d4, this bishop is no longer defended by a pawn on e3. So here if white tries to take the piece, white is an exchange up, but this knight is not getting away. So yeah, this is the subtle difference of why we want to take on d4. And if white, if white just wants to play c3, here a6 is very strong. Now knight c7 is not a problem anymore, as the knight is trapped. And after knight a3, again we follow with a very dynamic plan. Can you guess it? I don't know if it's being spoiled to you already with the game, with the moves. But knight d4 is the move, and after f6, e5, we are already going all in. Yeah, I'm getting all the center. Again, a very pleasing position with initiative, and I don't know. I really like how it's turning out to be this chapter. Like we have initiative all the way against every line. So now knight c7 is a critical stuff, and here what do? We just take on e3, yeah, which is like a very interesting concept. After knight a8, we take on f2, king f1, and here we just play knight c6. And the main take here is that if we just get the knight, we are already fine. We have 2 pawns for the exchange and much better king placement. And white is very late in development. And white has so many problems. Like white needs to take on f2 at some point. And then we will play knight d4 or knight g4 to prevent the king to just castle manually, I guess, artificially. So here, why did not white's first question take here? Because here we have a very dynamic solution as usual. E5, and basically white cannot take with the bishop. There is a double check. And again, remember that everything white loses is twice as costly as the knight is trapped here on a8. Yeah? And white can take with the knight. And here we have a very funny idea, which is g5. And white is lost because either bishop g3 or bishop g5, knight e4, we will take the knight and the bishop in both cases, and this knight will be falling. And if the bishop retreats, the same thing happens: knight e4 and the bishop and knight falling. And again, I made incise. White loses material and also has a knight that will be trapped on a8 and will lose then. So white is completely lost. So again, king f1 is a must. I'm pretty sure you could gain a lot of games with this. And after knight c6, suddenly white is again struggling to develop the pieces and to move around. Knight c7 is the most reasonable approach, and here knight h5, which is the theme usually to break the knight d5 would be very strong. Yeah, maybe we could play e6, but this is just something very different. Like now we need to exchange the queens, and this is far from clear. Yeah, like we are exchanged down and we exchange the queens, and we don't have that many pawns. Yeah, so again, here we have a very smart move, which is d4. Basically, now we renew the threat of knight h5, so white needs to do something. And h3 is the most reasonable way. And now knight h5, bishop h2, and now e5. We get an impressive center, and white is just left with, again, so many passive moves. Knight b5 is a must. a3, we just kick the knight. Like this knight comes from a8 to a3. And now e4. And this position is very sad for white, I would say. Like, white has a very poor king. Whenever white tries to take on f2, we can play e3 and we force the king back. And again, the rooks will be trapped there. We are rook down, but we have all the initiative and all the pieces are very absurd for white. So for instance, in case of knight d2, just going for knight f6, as this knight is actually our worst piece now because it doesn't do anything as the bishop controls it. And now we can play e3 and white can never move. And also we are threatening knight d5 and knight d3, which is even stronger in my opinion, as we want to make use of this square. And white has troubles developing. Knight c4 just has problems with b5, as the knight doesn't have anywhere to go. And basically it was a very funny position, but again, with the Benoni, I really think you need to understand how dynamics are very important, how sacrificing material can be very good for initiative, how to pay attention to your chances, and how does your opponent use the material advantage? Can they use it or not? So here it's actually white is completely lost. Yeah, like it's too passive and the pieces are not going well together. So this was a funny line that actually I'm pretty sure you can catch many people here off guard. Yeah, and after fe3, which is a reasonable alternative, I feel much more consistent because white still threatens knight a8 and still has the bishop defended. So for the price of a pawn, but here we play knight h5 still. And basically now the knight is definitely trapped. and we want some compensation as well. We take on b2. It's a bit greedy, but the idea, I mean, knight f2 is, king f2 is a bit more reasonable because knight d2 will be very too passive, and basically we will be able to take the knight very quickly without any counterplay. So king f2 is a bit more ambitious for white, so we need to take the piece, we need to be careful. But knight c6, and basically we want to just take out the bishop and just take, and here white doesn't have anything. The only thing I need to mention is queen d3, bishop b4. It's a bit smarter. Because the bishop on c5 might find the king a bit weak, and also, and also bishop f5 is an immediate threat to take the knight on a8. And let's say something like queen b5 that looks like black is doing some kind of pressure. We could even just play bishop f5, I guess, but a6 might be interesting. I'm not sure what's going on here. I guess queen d6. I was thinking queen d6 should be very interesting. But here white might have a sacrifice here with rook b4, and actually will be a piece down. Yeah, this I give you this as an example that this position, okay, it should be fine. It should be good for black, but it can also be tricky to deal with in case of complications happening. So for instance, here we could move the bishop away with bishop d6, let's say, and okay, and then we will want to move this bishop and then take the knight, because the knight cannot get out. Yeah, and this would be actually more than fine. Like, well, we have a permanent compensation on the dark squares. We have much more healthier pawn structure, as these pawns are very ugly, let's say. And basically, well, we have a very challenging position for white. Yeah, like white cannot just get to play the comfortable game. Yeah, so again, I feel this is quite fun variation. I feel like this d5 kind of solves everything together. And here we need to consider another move besides e3, which is queen d2. This is the most direct. We will see a model game in it. I mean, it's very straightforward. White wants to just castle and bishop h6 on mate us, but again, how do we answer to a flank attack with a counterplay in the center? So after bishop g7, bishop h6, we just castle, and if white tries to get crazy, we just play c5. Again, this what I really like about d5, knight f6, and g6. In this case, this setup, is that c5 is almost all the time the answer. We just give the pawn, we get space in the center, white cannot take. And for instance, if white just waits now we play h5, and again, we have 3 pieces covering g4. White doesn't even have pressure on h5, as you can take with the knight and not weaken our key inside. I mean, we have too much presence on the center. So, for instance, h5, we just take, queen h4, looks threatening, but actually not threatening anything. Now queen a5 check will follow, and the king is too weak. Like when we take, we always can take with the f pawn. And also here, I think there is a simple option to just take, like, because this looks scary, but really there is nothing. If gh, king h8, and the attack is done, and g7 might be the trickiest. And here, if white could get some pressure, immediate pressure on h3, on h7, white would be winning, but this is not the case. Yeah. And basically, we'll be able to play bishop f5 or try to exchange the queens at some point. I don't know, just mate him. Like, actually, queen d2 is a threat. Like here, actually, we could even exchange the queens directly with queen d2 check. Yeah. So yeah, in general, don't be afraid. Well, that's an advice in chess. Don't be afraid. Just ask why. Always have a move that annoys you, a way to annoy you. Don't let yourself take the fear, because chess players smell the fear. I was very good at this at a very young age, and when I smell the fear, I get so confident. Like, I feel like, okay, I can do anything with him, like or her in that case. And so basically, white can also castle, not being too fancy with h4. But here again, we play c5, and white can take the pawn. But after queen a5, we have a very healthy counterplay. We just want to play rook d8 and them. And here the only critical way is knight d5. It looks scary for white, but it's possible thanks to this pin. And after here, king d2, the king looks weird, but actually safe. And white is a pawn up, so it's not that stupid. So here rook d8, we kind of use the pin in our favor because knight c3 would be mated. Knight f6, sorry. So e4, white keeps using the pin, so it's a bit complicated move. Bishop e6, we keep increasing the pressure, we just developing. bishop c4, we do a check as the king goes to d2. So this knight is pinned now. And now queen a4. Yeah. And here we have a model game that you will see. And basically this position is terrible for white in practice, I would say, because knight d7, we will take on c5. White, the king is incredibly weak. Our king is very safe. We don't need to move it from g7. Even if there is a pin, it's fine. Everything is defended. And yeah, overall, this line doesn't bring much trouble to me. After discovering this d5 g6 setup, this is much more pleasant than any other setup I played with against this, because there was this e6 c5, but then e3 g4 is tricky, and all those structures are more similar to London, and white can be happy about it. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that this is the best setup, and this is just too good to annoy you. We have some model games for you, so you will see it in action and you will see some examples. And basically, yeah, I don't see the Jobava London or this creating any trouble for us. So yeah, I hope you beat them. Oh, obviously, and this is more important in lower time controls. But thanks to those Indian guys like Erigaisi and especially Erigaisi, played a lot in classical time controls as well. So you might be wary of it, but yeah, in Blitz you will see this a lot of times. So it's great to have practice with it, and I feel it's very good. I recently played in the World Rapid, the World Blitz, and completely steamrolled my opponent. So yeah, I feel this is a very good defense against the Jobava London, and you will have a lot of success with it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed as usual, and yeah, see you in another video.